A question that I get a lot from young developers, like in high school, is should I go to college or should I just get an internship and get right into the industry if possible? And I think there's pros and cons. Myself, I'm a self-taught developer and I've had a successful career in development and solution architecture, specifically in the security domain. And I think there's benefits to not being classically trained. You tend to, in my opinion, I feel like I think outside of the box a lot because I was kind of forced to in order to understand how it all works. And kind of coming from the outside, there was large monolith applications that I was responsible for kind of reverse engineering and understanding how it worked and how to make changes to that code base without being classically trained and understanding it from another perspective. I think there's some benefit there, but I've also worked with colleagues who were classically trained, have a computer science degree, and they also have that ability to think outside of the box, troubleshoot, which is the most important critical thinking skill to have. And as far as if you have the opportunity to go to college, being in that incubation atmosphere, I think is very helpful. Like so many cool applications that we know today were kind of incubated in that environment, that college environment, university environment. But there's also so many examples of applications that are really huge and developed well from folks that aren't classically trained. An example is Pierre Omidyar, who did end up going to college and did graduate, but actually started developing eBay in high school and allegedly built the first instance of that over a weekend as a personal experiment. So there's also examples like that. There's let's take Mark Zuckerberg, for example, who started coding in sixth grade, built ZuckNet at age 11 for his father's dentist office and things like that, and then later went on to build Facebook. He went to college for computer science and psychology, but dropped out. So there's those type of stories as well. You've got Bill Gates, who's famous for Microsoft, obviously, and he actually originally went to college for pre-law and then switched over to computer science and dropped out. And I think everybody kind of knows his story, but he taught himself BASIC at age 13 on a teletype, which I barely even know what that is. So that's a pretty cool story. And then you have Jack Dorsey. He went to college, but he taught himself to program at age 14. Steve Wozniak, who's famous for hardware design for Apple back in the day, he taught himself Fortran in high school. So you've got a lot of self-taught guys out there. David Karp is a really interesting case to me. Never attended college, dropped out of high school at age 15 and taught himself like front-end HTML, CSS, and became a CTO of a major startup by age 17. So there's obviously a very, very driven guy. Should you go to college? I think there's a lot of positives to going to college, and if you have that opportunity, you should do it. Do you have to go to college? I would say no. If you can find a good startup to join that's willing to give you an internship, or even maybe a larger company that's willing to intern, that could be a good idea. What I would recommend against is going and working for like a small company that you're the only IT guy there. You're installing Windows on PCs and setting up a network, potentially writing small integration code for this small company, and you're the IT guy, and nobody else there understands what you do. I would say that's not a good replacement for college or being an intern for a startup where you're going to learn from seniors, and you're going to be dropped right into, maybe not the deep end, but you're going to be swimming right away in real world scenarios, and hopefully have a team, leadership, folks you can learn from. That's also an excellent way to start your career. So if it seems like college just isn't very interesting to you, you don't think you'll do well there, or maybe you don't have the opportunity due to economic reasons, then try to find one of these scenarios where you can get into one of these companies. You can also start out by just building a project. Portfolios are huge. When I interview engineers, I'm asking questions like, have you built anything on your own? Let me see your GitHub repos. I want to see what you're doing when it's just you trying to build something. And I think that's very important to build up that portfolio. More important than, just being an IT guy at a company. So those are my thoughts. A lot of good examples of folks that taught themselves. There was, Kevin Systrom went to college for management science. He was working in marketing at Google and was a hobbyist coder, taught himself to build production-ready software at night, and eventually created Instagram. So another good example, a guy that did go to college, actually graduated, but not in computer science, taught himself coding later on. So that's my 2 cents, and good luck.